Now, it's Kirschenbaum and Son Wholesaler Jewelries on 78 Canal Street, New York to New York. This is probably about 30 years old. It says that this is a chart of the most important Masonic emblems. And from on the right-hand side, beginning after the Blue Lodge with the 4th degree, Secret Master, going all the way up to the 32nd degree, they have the list of names of the various Masonic degrees, the rituals and the degree that you are awarded if you pass the initiation exercise, drama, and test for that degree. And it shows very clearly, for example, that most of the names have a Jewish influence. There is the Knight of the Brazen Serpent, the Prince of the Tabernacle, Chief of the Tabernacle. There's the Prince of Jerusalem. I mean, how more direct can you be? If you've got the if you've worked up to the 16th degree in Freemasonry, you'll be awarded the Prince of Jerusalem title. And there's a number of others to boot. The Knight Kadosh, number 30, the 30th degree, is also Masonic. Some years ago, as I began to look at Freemasonry and its relationship to Israel, in fact, the control of Israel by Masons, let me repeat that. Today, Israel, the nation of Israel, and the higher level Jewish positions in banking, finance, the media, the corporate world in the United States and Europe, and let me go and include South America, Asia, and other continents in that as well. The higher level positions are all held by Masons, Freemasons. So the Masonic Lodge and Judaism or Jewry are deeply connected. Now, in a magazine called Inside Israel, the August 1996 edition, now this is an Israeli source, a Jewish source, it gave this fact, and by the way, this was also reported in Mahariv, the daily newspaper in Tel Aviv, and by other Jewish sources in the nation of Israel. Let me just read a little bit to you here. It says, on May 3rd, 1996, Tel Aviv police raided an apartment, joined by reporters from the state-run television news program and the daily newspaper Devar Rishon. They found a bizarre scene. The walls were covered in Latin script. Skulls and bones graced the shelves. Swords were crossed and mounted around an altar. 5 doors led to secret passageways with red blinking intruder warning lights. The news report the next day announced, quote, the apartments were used for ceremonies by the Freemasons, an organization whose membership, and we're talking about Israeli membership, Jewish membership, whose membership boasts cabinet ministers and high-ranking army officers. Fascinating. Goes on to say that in spring of 1994, 2 other Israeli publications, Yediat Aronot and the Shishi, published long articles about Freemasonry in Israeli society. Both newspaper reports agreed that Prime Minister, that is the late Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, had been a Mason since the 1960s, and that in 1976, Rabin presided over a large Masonic convention in Jerusalem. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, was also said to be a Mason. He was recruited when he was Israel's ambassador to the United Nations in New York City in the 1980s. Both newspapers observed that King Hussein, now he's a Muslim, isn't he? Yes, he is. He's an Arab. But King Hussein of Jordan had been a high-ranking and proud Mason who often traveled to London, England, to participate in secret Masonic ceremonies. Quite fascinating, isn't it? And he goes on to talk about the Masons. Here's a book sent to me by Barry Kamish called Traitors and Carpetbaggers in the Promised Land, a journal of Israel's betrayal. Mr. Kamish is a very fascinating writer. He talks in here about the Kissinger connection, the CFR connection, the Clinton connection, the Vatican connection, the Mormon connection, the Rabin assassination connection, and there is a chapter in here about the Masons who appear to be in control of the nation of Israel. Then we go on a little further to document the influence of Freemasonry in Israel. In October 1993, in the La Repubblica, that's an Italian newspaper, one of the most respected daily newspapers in Italy, La Repubblica, October 1993, was an article entitled Israel, the Pact Between Politicians and Masons. Fascinating, isn't it? It reported on a gala 40th anniversary celebration in Jerusalem of the founding of the Great Lodge of the State of Israel of ancient and accepted Freemasons. It says the ceremony was attended by the mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kollek, as well as the chief rabbi, Israel Meir Lau. The chief rabbi of Israel, Meir Lau. Now, here's what the mayor of Jerusalem now, told the gathering of Masons. He said, quote, "You do a great honor to Jerusalem. This is natural," said Mayor Kollek, "considering that King Solomon was the great builder of the temple, which is at the roots of the Masonic idea, and that his workmen were the first Masons." Well, the rabbi now, for his own part, when he got up to speak to this big gala meeting of Masons, Jews came from all over the world to it, Rabbi Lau, now remember he's the chief Jewish rabbi for the whole nation of Israel, he stated this, he said, quote, "The principles of Freemasonry are all contained in the book of books of the Jewish people." It was noted that there were 4,000 Israeli Freemasons, and they were divided into 76 different lodges. I went on the internet and researched this subject. I found, for example, that there is even in Jerusalem a Grand Lodge of Jerusalem. Now, this is also fascinating because I went back and I did a lot of research into all of my Masonic references. Here, for example, is volume 2 of the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. Notice on the spine here, it's by Albert Mikey, 33rd degree, and Charles McClanahan, 33rd degree. Okay? Now, in this tremendous resource, and I can't even tell you how many pages it is, but it goes to about 1,000 pages, and notice it's got gold, gilt edging around it. But I found some very interesting information. For example, on page 753, there is a very interesting illustration, piece of artwork of the Masonic Lodge of Jerusalem. They used the name Palestine because, of course, before Israel was founded in the 1947-48 era by the United Nations, that area of the world, Israel, was called, in fact, Palestine. And now today, of course, Palestine, we think of the Palestinian region that's controlled by Yasser Arafat and the PLO. But in fact, that was called Palestine. And this particular piece of art says, this is called the Foundation of the Royal Order of the Freemasons in Palestine. And it's dated AM 4037. Now, AM 4037, you see, the Masons have a different, they refuse to accept the chronological system that goes all the way, the AD that we use, because AD means Anno Domini, or after Christ. So they use their own system, the year of light. This means that this picture of this lodge of the Freemasons in the country of Palestine can be dated back 1,700 years. 1,700 years. Now, we're going to reveal a few secrets to you here about the Masons and the Jews. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of Jewish Masons who set tremendous, well, let's just say they set records for bloodshed and bloodthirstiness. Here is a gentleman, for example. I hesitate to call him a gentleman. His name, Karl Marx. Karl Marx. He's called the father of communism, of course. Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin,